From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Digital Strategist at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's show, I have Mr. Tim Nash with me with his regular security segment, and we are going to talk about how AI impacts the world of security. Sit back, relax, enjoy the SDM show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing concierge that helps you put all your marketing pieces together. We are your marketing experts. We are also your WordPress security experts and know how to lock down a website and protect yourself from bad actors. So contact us at Stunning Digital Marketing today. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. Today I'm my good friend, Mr. Tim Nash, and today's all about security. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing all right, though I wish my weather was less Canadian and it was going back to that nice British summer weather that I was having a few weeks ago. It's just grey and miserable now.
Yeah, well, it is Canadian because it's gray and miserable now, you know. We have had one of those Mays where this has been the coldest May on record in Toronto in the last 20 years. So that tells you. So,
Oof.
and then next week's going to be 29 degrees Celsius at the time of this record. So, you know, we're
See,
into that.
now if you could just bring that weather over, I'd be quite happy.
Yeah, then we'll negotiate. So, yeah. So you and I were talking as we always do, and there's lots going on in the security space, but I thought it was worth that we dive into what the impact of AI on security was. And that's a broad topic. We can kind of go wherever we want to go with it. What do you think?
Um, AI, it's great. It's wonderful. It's amazing until it's not.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it has completely revolutionized in some respects, some aspects, but not, I suspect, the things most people think of when they think of AI. Uh, if you took the most, I think it's now become our favoriteest topic when we've been chatting of phishing. AI has revolutionized the phishing industry, and bad actors using just, using it to write better emails, which is, of course, something that everybody else on the planet is using it for. But that means it's now becoming much harder to detect things because of just AI being used in that just one use case. But
Yeah. No, I would agree. I was looking at my spam box this morning before we got on this call, and not only is the text getting better in the phishing emails, the graphics are getting even better because of AI. Because we know Chat GPT, Grok, and Gemini now does photos. So here you go, phishing experts. Here's all you need to be a pain in Rob and Tim's side, or generate Rob and Tim revenue. I'm not sure which, but you know.
I don't really get revenue, sadly, from spam email. I should work out a way of getting more revenue from spam and phishing attacks.
Yeah, it is getting silly. Where else is I would say AI is probably causing issues in finding vulnerabilities when you think as well.
Um, yes and no. So I think yes, there is clearly a case where people are throwing code bases at AIs and seeing what comes back. But actually, I think what's not we're seeing more of, and this is more of a guess and anecdotal, is that when a vulnerability has been discovered and it's been announced, what we're seeing is a much shorter time to exploitation. So while I'm suspecting that AI is being used less in finding vulnerabilities than perhaps you might imagine, it's being used more for creating those proof of concepts and taking that proof of concept code to an exploitable, actionable thing to start utilizing and causing chaos and mayhem. And that sort of bears out because we can see a lot more rise in the short period of time between something being announced as having a vulnerability and something being delivered. We can also see a huge rise in the amount of failures of packet of where, so when something's tried to compromise something, it's failed in a dramatic way, and it's nearly always failing due to its own code, which is possibly a sign that people are just running these things rather than, well, instead of doing the sort of like around a test and then getting the feedback and themselves editing, they are literally trying to do those one shots using whatever AI tool to generate a proof of concept and then throwing it out there, and aren't really doing as much testing as you would have done if you were manually writing that code yourself.
Yeah, that is true. I think part of the problem is if you're using AI in the WordPress world to generate, say, a plugin, I'm not so sure that code is really secure unless you go through it line by line after. What's your thoughts on that? Is that a bad idea, a good idea?
So I saw a article the other day that said that the plugin repository was up like 80% on plugin submissions, and it was attributed to AI. There are things you can do to improve AI's code, but as for my day job, I'm a code reviewer. That's effectively what I do for a job.
Yeah.
I look at code all day, every day, and I can quickly tell if something's been written by AI. I can, to a certain extent, tell you which AI model did it because they all have their own little quirks and they have their own ways of writing, just like every other developer does. But because they're an amalgamation of so many things, their quirks are often quite pronounced and quite obvious in the way that they do things, especially around their own comments. If you allow your AI to comment things, which is a good thing because at least you're seeing some comments, you can really identify which AI wrote which set of comments. But unless you tell them, "Hey, make this secure," they don't. It's a, you know, that said, I believe that if you ask your average developer to write code, unless you say, "Oh, and by the way, make it secure," they won't
Yep.
necessarily by default create code that is secure either. So they work at a very similar base level. If you think of a AI as a 12-year-old kid being given the power to write code, but that having that 12-year-old kid mentality, that they do have the ability to do everything they're asked to do, but you do have to babysit them and say, you must do this step, you must do this step, you must do this, you must keep it secure, you must do this. Even if just the people doing WordPress, if you're using WordPress dev work and you're writing plugins and stuff, if you just write into the AI, please follow the WordPress coding standards, it won't do that. It won't follow the coding standards. It doesn't really know what those words mean, but it statistically can find enough code that followed the WordPress coding standards to have a vague idea what it should look like, which is ultimately how AI codes, by just
Yep.
guessing what the next thing it should do is. So if you tell it to follow the WordPress coding standards, at least you're getting something out that is slightly readable. And is terrifying how saying to the AI, assume you are a senior developer with years of experience and you will write secure code, somehow makes the AI write more legible code that's secure. It's actually sort of like a bit mind-boggling when you think about it.
No, it is. Is there an AI model that writes more secure code or less secure code, or having, as your experience as a code reviewer?
Um, so an AI model is only as good as whatever you give it as a prompt. So whatever you tell it to, garbage in, garbage out, to a certain extent. There are some models that are more reliable with what the prompt you give them, and the codes, the Sonnet models, all tend to be much more stricter in their alignment with what
Yeah.
they believe. When you give them a prompt, they'll follow that prompt a little bit more. Some of the OpenAI ones are actually a little bit more, yeah, well, you said that, but I'm going to do this anyway. Interestingly, if you're using any of the reasoning models, and that's so stuff like DeepSeek, like the more recent OpenAI models, those are probably worse in some respects because they think about it, and that tends to mean that they will wander off piste quite easily. and you often can get data for code. You can often get things back that you weren't expecting because it's decided that you were wrong and it's going to do it its way. So on the whole, I've seen the models where it's not necessarily doing its own reasoning, but it's got a good something like Sonnet. Is it 3.7? I think is the latest one.
No, I just one. Yeah, that rings a
Yeah.
bell.
So yeah, Sonnet 3.5 and 3.7 are both quite good. 3.5 oddly is better at certain things than 3.7 when it comes to coding. But both of those for appear on the surface to be closer to what I'm guessing the original prompts are. Of course, one of the things that when I'm reviewing code is that I don't necessarily know what the original prompt was. Though I have had in the last week or so, someone send me the prompt they used and then asked me, has it done the same thing? Which I thought was a novel way to show it's like, this is what we've asked it to do. Is this what it actually produced? Like, no.
No, that's interesting. You mentioned DeepSeek. I do want to go there for a minute. We know DeepSeek is Chinese developed. Should we be staying away from that just because of the nature of where it is, or is it inherent to all the other problems that AI has, and we're overblowing the concern?
So, I mean, if you were in China, Claude, which is the people, Claude 3.7, which is the Sonnet,
Yep.
is owned by Anthropic, which is ultimately a subsidiary of Amazon, I think, and is a US company. If you're in China, are you trusting them? The difference,
Okay.
though, between Claude and DeepSeek is, well, if you go on to chat.deepseek. Whatever their domain name is, I don't know what it is, and you start typing in, there's a reasonable chance that everything you type into that box is going off to somewhere in China. It just is.
Yep. No question.
And what comes back is coming back from the same location. But DeepSeek, unlike, say, the Claude models or the OpenAI models, just because OpenAI has the word open in their name, they're not actually open sourced models. They're not freely available. You can't run them locally on yourself. The DeepSeek models, though, you can actually run on your own machine. Admittedly, you need quite a beefy machine to actually get it to do what you want. But you can take down their large language model and you can run it, which means in many ways, the DeepSeek open source model it can be considered much more trustworthy because we can actually have a look, and people are looking through it and can see the model and can see how it was trained and all the other bits and pieces. So from that perspective, it's a better model to use. But the problem is that most people aren't using that version. They're using the one that is sitting on a cloud server somewhere that's passing all the data. But what are you putting in it? If you're putting in highly sensitive highly sensitive data, you shouldn't be doing that into any model. I was sat watching somebody who was in a coffee shop putting their accounts, like their bank account, into
Yes.
ChatGPT. I was like, I didn't even go and say anything because I was just staggered at the idea that you're like, no.
By the way, the stuff you see people do on computers in coffee shops that are not secure is outrageous. I mean, I have stumbled across this time and time again, and I just shake my head and say, nah. So, um, so
But
that
to sort
talks
of
a bit
follow
about
on for
that.
that, just to follow on, I use a
Sure.
local LLM on my own machines. So I have a piece of software called Olama, which lets me run multiple different LLMs, and I sort of chop between them. But if I want to use a AI or an interface like ChatGPT, but I want to do it on code or on something that is private and I'm not so worried about, something that I am worried about, sorry, I'll run that locally, and the results won't be quite as good as these really fancy, amazing models, but they are reasonable depending on what you're trying to get out of it. If you want like a summary from a document, they are very reasonable. If you want it to proofread something for you, they are very reasonable. if you want it to come up with something deep and meaningful, they are probably not suitable in that. Alongside that, I do have a ChatGPT subscription, and I will throw stuff at the ChatGPT, but nothing is, and it is very sensitive. Today it had I used ChatGPT to edit one of my LinkedIn posts. I then, having told it several times to proofread this and edit it with the correct English and what tone it should be using, and that it should avoid using M dashes and emojis. And then, of course, it produced something that was full of M dashes and emojis. And so I re-edited it again. But it's a useful tool, and people shouldn't be necessarily scared of useful tools. They just should use them in the right way.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that one. So we know there's bots out on the internet, and they run around to wonderful little WordPress websites and say, geez, did this silly person use admin? Geez, did this silly person use password 1234? And geez, look what I found. And we know that's how these bots work. They go around. We have bot attacks every day. Is AI helping the bot attacks, or is it really indifferent?
I mean, the thing about AI is it's slow and requires a lot of resources.
Yep.
So when you're starting to work on these bot attacks, you're working at scale, like massive scales, hundreds of thousands of servers. You're probably not going to want to wait 35 seconds for each time you'd want just to get the requests to pass through, when you could have been doing all these basic attacks yourself. The basic attacks that have existed in the past still exist today. It makes no sense to replace a lot of that with that. I'm sure somebody has, and I'm sure it's being done on a smaller scale. But those large scale bot attacks are probably not using AI that way. What they might be doing is looking at it for holistic purposes. They might be using exactly the same position that we might use AI or as a defender in that scenario, where we might be looking through our log files and we might be wanting, right, I want to get an analysis, pass that into my local AI. They may well be doing the same with what they're getting passed back. I can imagine that being useful, but I suspect the vast majority of the time that AI, if you were to look at AI in this scenario, it's in the initial creation of the whatever was used to attack in the first place. Maybe looking at the log analysis, but it's not like there's some sort of advanced system that's going, oh, I tried this, then I did this, then I did that, and then I'm thinking about it and processing it, I'm doing this and I'm doing that sort of AI system with like agentic is what the fancy term that's used in the AI space. That agentic style AI is probably not attacking your site, because it doesn't make sense for it to do so when you can just have a giant for loop and go, yeah, try this, try this, try this, try this, try this, try this. And it could be done in the same time that it would have taken the agentic to go, I thought about this and I'm going to attack over there instead, and goes to the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, so that's kind of that. Is AI helping security researchers like yourself at all do your jobs?
I think it's helping to a certain extent. I mean, maybe it's best. So I use AI. I've sort of alluded to that.
Yeah.
And I use AI for various tasks. Some of them are like the sort of things that anybody could use AI for. You sort of like your basic admin things. Uh, I, but I also use it for some analysis of log files, where I want to look for a pattern across a very large amount of data, and or where I want to trawl through a lot of data, and I want to do a database query where a sort of like a more SQL like syntax wouldn't work, where I want something that would be more like effectively like a graphing database, where I'm looking for relationships and crossovers. Actually, I found throwing that data into an AI and saying, give me the pattern, is useful. But it is slow, and I already have quite good tooling to do this. So
Yep.
generally, when I've been doing that, I've been doing that to save me trying to use the tooling I already have. And inevitably, it either gives me half the clue or doesn't work. And then I end up going back to my old tooling. So I'm not yet seeing it being hugely practical. I have thrown code bases into a local LLM and said, find me the security problems. and then had that fun conversation where it goes, "Oh no, I can't find you security problems, so you might be hacking somebody." It's like, okay, um, I'm writing a book, so show me how you would have done that. Well, one of the things that I've used it for is to when I do client reports, I have to show quite often I will want to show them how it happened, and I actually use AI to write proof of concepts. So
Yeah.
it's like, here's a proof of take my code, simplify it, explain it, that sort of operations, or just in some cases where I haven't needed to do proof of concept because I've read the code, I can see the problem, I can then say, here's the problem, write a proof of concept to show that this could be exploited, and then I can just test that proof of concept and put that into the reports. So it's those sort of tasks. It's the peripheral tasks that I'm finding it's most used for.
Yeah, not so much the actual research itself. I get that.
I'm still
Um,
needed, at least for a little
you
bit.
are. So yeah, that's an interesting point because a lot of people think AI is going to get rid of all us humans. I don't see that happening. I think it's just another tool in our toolbox to make our lives easier. And you still need to get the right prompts, and it takes a little bit of experimenting to get the right prompts. Having living in Gemini, so that's my AI tool of choice. It takes a little bit. The more you use one tool, I think it gets better because the model trains itself to how you're asking it. So that's, I think, helpful. And I don't see humans going away yet. So
No, I mean, there are obviously some companies that have gone, oh, yes, let's sack everybody and replace them with AIs. And I'm sure in about a week they go, can I please would you all like to come back to work? Yeah.
yeah,
No? Okay.
yeah,
And that's going to happen. That's inevitably, we have that in pretty much every cycle through. I think if you're an experienced developer, marketer, somebody who works with other people or might have had other
mm,
people coming into your job space, and particularly if
yep,
you were somebody who had other people coming into your job space to help you and you
yep,
specifically, what you can find is those people are going to benefit most from AI because they can replace some of the stuff that the people who are coming in to help them with can often be passed out to an AI who might not do it very well, but I suspect a lot of those people would argue that the person they were handing it to weren't going to do it very well either. And in those scenarios, and in development, that's very much, I think you're seeing senior developers and developers with lots of experience can really plow ahead with AI and can become much more productive and much more efficient and have a lot more creativity and fun with it. Whereas
mm,
somebody who's never coded in their life, they get to play with AI and become like be able to write code, and that's amazing. And the people in the middle, and particularly like your junior developers, are the ones who are going to potentially suffer, and not necessarily the junior developers we have in organizations right now, but the ones who are going to be, schools out in what, a month's time, 2 months' time. We're going to have a bunch of newly qualified or perhaps not qualified, but just want to start getting apprenticeships, getting junior developer roles, kids coming out of school. They might suffer because what I have noticed as a turn down is I'm not seeing as many junior developer roles. And if
yeah,
companies think they don't need junior developers because their senior developers no longer need that support or appear on the
mm,
face of it to no longer need that support, then those junior devs are going to have to find another way into the industry. And the worry from my perspective is that they'll do that by going off and doing their own thing or trying to do it through freelancing and consulting and that sort of route. And generally, it's not entirely true, but generally having that little bit of agency experience or working off somebody else really does benefit you long term.
yeah.
So if
It
you're
does.
coming out of school, going into an agency for a little while or going into a workplace for a little while always is going to give you a better perspective than if you just jump and go, right, I'm going to be a freelance web dev, off I go. Plenty of people do that. There are plenty of people who are fantastic, but generally, I find people need a little bit of time with a more experienced person to get the hang of what they're doing. And we're going to lose that gap, and that gap's going to widen. So the senior devs are going to be able to do more stuff. The AI is going to help them more. And the middle people are going to end up coming up to the senior, up our ranks into the more senior devs, and they get the benefits. But these people just coming out sort of get stuck because while they have all the benefits of the technology, they don't have the benefits of the experience and getting access to the experience. So we could, not this year, maybe next year, and in a couple of years, start noticing that we have a direct experience gap, not necessarily a skill gap, which will come back to bite us because security is not taught at schools properly. If you go onto universities and you go in and look to their computer science courses, security is not taught very well. Consequently, if you've got a bunch of people who are coming out and then they don't get real world experience early on, they're going to take bad practices and pass them through their careers, which isn't great.
Yeah, so true. I wanted to circle back to one thing that just sort of popped in my head. AI and voice. And this is really important. One of the things I've been saying for a long time, especially if you're a well-known person or your voice is on the internet, do not use AI for voice validation for any bank accounts, any communications accounts, as Tim smiles at me, as anything else. Because I've actually read a couple of stories where a couple of people in the US have had bank accounts drained because they were used AI voice validation. Should you, shouldn't you, or
No, I mean
somewhere in between?
I think your voice is not ultimately your voice is a wave pattern.
Yes.
If you were to take someone's voice and digitally record it and pass it into, or even analog record it, in fact, that's probably a better example, and pass it through an oscilloscope, you'll see a wave up and down. That is your voice. That
Yeah.
means that if someone matched that wave, they have your voice. Your voice is not like a fingerprint, or it's not a really particularly safe biometric. I mean, I wouldn't use a voice recognition even before AI because, what if I have a heavy cold and I really need to get that bag
Yep.
authorization,
Yep.
but I'm sniveling and I've got a heavy cold. There's just too much at risk. Plus, I have a British accent that is too far apart from a US accent. So all of these voice systems are based around like California and US like accents.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when you're just buying tickets for a cinema and you have to sit there and go, I want the 3:30. No, I want the 4 o'clock viewing of the whatever I'm trying to order at the cinema. Imagine doing that for your banking. It would be a nightmare.
Nightmare. That's true. Anything else with AI and security, Tim, that you can think of to kind of summarize or sum up?
I think I want to say don't be put off by
Yeah.
because obviously we're talking quite negatively, but we're not. I think throughout this
We're
we've
not.
talked about the fact we both use AI, that we both
All the time. Yeah.
and it is a useful tool in the right hands and for the right people. A couple of things that you need to know is that if you're using it, so is everybody else. So are the bad actors. Right at the start, we talked about phishing and how emails are getting better. So you need to get better at spotting it. I think a critical thinking skill that we're going to develop as sort of people on the internet will be that people will start to really be able to identify AI driven content. So it doesn't really matter whether you're a marketer, a developer, or whoever you might be. Something to consider with that in mind, that if you are writing content, if we can all tell AI driven content, one of the things that will separate us from the robots will be when you write and talk with your voice. And
Yeah.
there will come a point where your voice, your someone who might send an email claiming it to be you, and it not sounding like you might save the day because it will look correct and it will be spelt correct. So maybe start putting in misspellings into your emails from now on, just so people will know that if you're being replaced by an AI or not.
Yeah, that's funny. Hey, Tim, as always, thanks so much. What are you working on and what do you want to share with people today?
So I can't remember if I'd launched it last time I was on, but I have a WordPress security course. It's
Yes.
called WordPress. No, it's not. It's called WP Security 101. And you can find it at wpsecurity101.com. It's a WordPress security course for professionals. That's everybody who uses a WordPress site as a developer, as a sysadmin, or as somebody who just configures and creates and maintains a site. It's probably for you. The course has got a sign up right now for pre-registration, which you can sign up to the mailing list for free. It will be a paid course. I have done one round of very early pre-sales, which was the feedback from that was lovely. And so now I'm in the phase of editing. By the time you see this, I may have released it. If not, it will be in the next couple of weeks. But go check out wpsecurity101.com.
And where can we check you at, Tim?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on linkedin.com/in/tnash, or you can find me on my website, timnash.co.uk.
Thanks so much, Tim. Have yourself a wonderful day and hope you get some of that non-UK weather soon.
I wish. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. This podcast has been brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital marketing concierge to help the business owner put all his pieces together, whether it's email marketing, WordPress security, WordPress design and development, PPC, and more. Text Stunning Digital Marketing for all your digital marketing needs today. A very special thank you to Tim Nash for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much every day. My mother, Ann Cairns, who's still doing really well and is an inspiration. And of course, Tiz Maroney. And Tiz, I know I've said it, but thank you so much for all the inspiration you give me every day.